So in the last session, we have discussed about the Force.com platform overview and what exactly the Force.com platform and what we can do with the help of this Force.com platform. What are the various of features offered by the Force.com platform we have discussed. So from now onwards, we are discussing each and every feature offered by the Force.com platform and how can we make use of it while implementing our custom applications or at the time of programmatic customizations. Now, Force.com platform provides the two programming approaches by default. One is the Apex programming, second one is the Visual Force programming. Now, today we will see what exactly the Apex programming language and what kind of features offered by Apex programming and how to write some Apex programming languages and how to build our own custom business logics and how can we make use of it, how to perform the operations inside our Salesforce objects we'll see practically. Now, so as we have discussed yesterday, that when coming to the every application will be having the three layers inside that. So one is the front end, where exactly we are going to be implementing the graphical user interfaces by which the user can able to interact with that application to perform some operations inside the application. The user can able to insert few records, they can able to modify few records, they can able to delete few records, they can able to see the records or whatever the operation they want they can perform by using that graphical user interface. But the graphical user interface is not having that much of intelligence to perform that operations directly. Internally, when you click on a particular button, it may be insert button, it may be cancel button, it may be edit button, it may be delete button, it may be view button or whatever. Whatever the button controls are available on that graphical user interface, when you click on that button control, it is going to be invoking some business logic inside that. Now that business logic we are going to be providing inside that controller part, nothing but the business logic part. So now this business logic we have to implement with the help of Apex programming. By using Apex programming, we can able to implement the custom business logic. We can implement the custom business logic. Then what is the need of implementing custom business logic over here? For example, whenever I'm creating a new custom object, Salesforce is providing one table and Salesforce is providing the page layout. Salesforce is providing the business logic. Also, then what is the need of implementing my own business logic again? Suppose there might be some requirements here. Assume that. Let's take a requirement. For example, whenever you are creating a new custom object, Salesforce provides a table with the specified name of the object. Because the object name and the table name will be exactly same, Salesforce is providing one table to you. Along with that, Salesforce is providing one graphical user interface also to you. It provides a graphical user interface also with the help of the fields which you have created. Now on that graphical user interface, it is providing the insert button, nothing but the save button, cancel button, and then edit button, delete button, and the view button. All these buttons will be available to you. So now at that time, after entering the data inside these fields, when you click on some save button or insert button, automatically the record will be getting inserting into that associated table automatically over here. The record will be getting inserted inside the table. Now who is inserting that record? Now the record details will be sending to that business logic. Now the business logic is going to be inserting the record details into that associated table. It will be redirecting the user to the detail page of the record. This is the actual functionality is happening inside that. But when coming to the save button, The save button is going to be inserting the record blindly into that associated object. It won't cross check with this name already employee details are available or not. Because if I'm creating the multiple employees information with the same name, if I'm having multiple account employee records with the same name, it will be an ambiguity for me here. So for that here what happened, I need to cross check the duplication process. I need to add the duplication check. So now the duplication check is not available by default inside that save button. When I click on save button, it will be blindly saving that record. It won't cross check that whether with this name already one employee record is exist or not. Blindly it will be saving that. But my requirement is here, before inserting the record into the table, first of all, it has to cross check whether with this name already an employee record is exist or not. If this record is exists with this name, it has to show some message already we have an employee record with this name, so that we cannot create a duplicate record again. No, I want this kind of business logic over here, but that is not available when coming to the save button directly here. Then what we can do, we need to implement by our own. In order to implement your own custom business logic, we are going to be using the Apex programming language. By using Apex programming language, we can able to build our own custom business logic over here. Business logic means what? When you click on a particular button control, whatever the statements that you want to invoke, those statements are called as business logic, which are going to performing the actual operations inside that associated table. So for that here, we are going to be implementing our own custom business logics. Now for that, we are going to be using this Apex programming language. Now let's see what exactly the Apex programming language and what are the various fundamental rules has to be followed upon using this Apex programming language to build our own custom business logic. Now let's see. So now when coming to the Apex programming language, Apex programming language is the world's first cloud-based and object-oriented programming language. Apex is the world's first cloud-based programming. It is a cloud-based programming here. Cloud-based programming means generally, if you want to write any code by using a certain programming language, it may be by using C or C++, Java or .NET. At that time, those software has to be get installed into your local system first. We have to install that programming language software into your local system. Then only we can able to make use of it to build your own custom business logic, to write your programming code, to perform some operations. But Apex programming language no need to install into your local system, because this is purely the cloud-based programming where everything is available inside the internet. Just we have to write the code inside the browser and we have to send the code to the platform. Now the platform will compile that code. It will execute the code. It will send the response back to you. So now for that, when coming to the Apex programming language, this is the world's first cloud-based programming language, and that too, it will be an object-oriented programming language to you. Like as we are having so many object-oriented programming languages are available to you. We are having Smalltalk. Smalltalk is the world's first object-oriented programming language. And then we are having C++. We are having Java programming. We are having C# .NET programming. So many programming languages are available which are purely supporting the object-oriented functionalities. Like the same way, this Apex programming is also purely an object-oriented programming language. If it is an object-oriented programming language, then how the business logic has to be get construct? How to implement this business logic? Now in Apex programming language, each business logic should be implemented in terms of classes and objects. Every business logic, every functionality has to be implemented in terms of the classes and the objects. Every business logic has to be available in terms of a class and in terms of an object here. Now, so what exactly the class, what exactly the object will see practically. Now, when coming to the Apex programming language, by using Apex programming language, what we can do? By using this Apex programming language, we can able to perform the various operations inside your Salesforce instance. So then what kind of operations we can do over here? So now, when coming to the Apex programming language, by using this programming language, we can implement the complex validation rules. Complex validation rules and the complex transactional flows. Whatever the business logic that you want, whatever the complex validation rules that you want, everything we can able to implement with the help of this Apex programming language. Because already we did some validation rules also by using some ready-made functions given by Salesforce. But there are some limitations are there. On an object, we can able to have maximum of 100 active validation rules, not more than that. There is a limitation is available here. For example, I want to go beyond those limitations. I want more than 100 validation rules because I'm having some 400 fields are there inside my object which requires the validations here. So for that more than 100 validation rules I would like to create, but that is not supporting by the Salesforce by default with the help of that validation rules. For that one, whatever the validation rules are required, then few of the validation rules up to 100 we can implement with the help of the validation rules, and the remaining we can implement with the help of Apex programming language. Or else the whole validation rules itself we can write inside this Apex programming language itself. That possibilities are available to you, where we can use those validation rules in order to validate the data before saving into that associated object or before updating into that associated object. Now for that, all the complex validation rules we can able to write with the help of this Apex programming language. And then, so when coming to the Apex programming language, each Apex programming each statement in the Apex programming should be end with a semicolon. Should be ends with a semicolon. Now this is a fundamental rule. Whenever you are writing the code by using Apex programming language, each and every statement has to be ends with a semicolon. Like a C programming language, like a C++, Java, and the .NET, in every programming language we're having this fundamental rule. Every statement should be end with a semicolon. So when coming to the Apex programming also, this is also having the similar kind of the rule. The next one. Apex is a tightly coupled programming language. Tightly coupled programming language. So what do you mean by tightly coupled programming? Basically, we are having two types of programming. One is tightly coupled, second one is loosely coupled programming. So what do you mean by tightly coupled? What do you mean by loosely coupled programming? Now, let's see here. For example, so let's assume that I'm having some two values over here. I'm having two values, 100 and the 500. Now I want to perform some operations on this one. It may be some mathematical operations. arithmetic operations. Why? Because these are the numerical values. So that on the numerical values, you can perform some mathematical calculations or the arithmetic calculations. So now for that here, I would like to perform some addition operation. I would like to perform some subtraction operation and some multiplication operation, division, etc. Whatever the mathematical calculations or the operations are there, I would like to perform those operations on these values. So now if you want to perform these operations, then at that time, every time we have to write that value 100 plus 500, 100 minus 500, 100 into 500, like that we have to write that value. Instead of writing this 100 and 500 every time, what I want to do is, I want to store these values into some variables. So for that here, I'm defining two variables over here. Okay, I'm defining two variables because here I'm using some C programming language syntax over here. So now for that I'm specifying integer x comma y values. So now what this statement describes, I think everybody is aware of some C programming basic fundamentals because everybody has done the graduation, and during that graduation in the in the first semester you will be having that C programming language will be the common programming. Now I have defined the two variables by using the integer data type. Now what this statement will do, this statement is going to be instructing to the compiler, to the C programming language compiler, that the user has defined the two variables with the name x and y of type integer. So please reserve the required amount of memory for this variable x and the y so that the user can store some value inside that. So now as soon as whenever you are defining this statement integer x comma y, now it is instructing to the compiler that the user has defined the two variables with the name x and y, which are of type integer. Nothing but x is also an integer type, y is also an integer type, so that these two variables can able to hold some integer values inside that. So now in order to hold that values inside that, whatever the memory is required, so please reserve that required amount of memory for these variables. So now at that time, it is going to be reserving some amount of memory for these variables. So now for the text, it is going to be reserving some amount of memory. For the y variable, it is reserving some amount of memory over here. For the x, it will reserve some amount of memory. For the y variable, it will reserve some amount of memory here. Now, so let's assume that, so this is the memory has been reserved for the x variable, and this is the memory has been reserved for the y variable. Now, after that, once you have assigned that, once you have reserved that memory location, then we can able to assign the value. I'm assigning some x equals to some 100. I'm assigning some y equals to some 500. So now, whenever you are going to be assigning some value for that variable, then automatically this value will be storing inside the memory location reserved for the x variable here. Now this is the memory location has been reserved for the x variable, so that in this particular memory location that value will be getting resides. The 100 value will be getting resides inside that, and for the y variable, whatever the memory has been reserved, in that it will be storing that value 500. Now, suppose for example here, I want to perform some operations on that. Like I want to perform some operations like as x plus y. Now I'm performing some addition operation. Now this addition operation is going to be producing some result. Then where we can store that result here. Now I'm going to be defining the variable like this. Result equals to x plus y. I'm writing the code, result equals to x plus y. So now if I'm executing like this, then what will happen in this case? Will my program will execute? Or it will show some compilation errors? Or what? Now, whenever you are trying to be executing this code, it will be displaying that error message to you. A compilation error will be getting displayed. Why? Because is when coming to the C programming is also purely a tightly coupled programming where each and every variable has to be get defined before its usage. We have to define the variable first. You have to define the variable first, and then only we can able to start utilizing that inside your program wherever you want. So now here, how can we define that? So we have defined that variable over here. Integer x comma y. So now I have defined the two variables. That's what it is allocating some amount of memory. Inside that memory, I have stored the value inside that. But now in this case, in this statement, I'm using result equals to x plus y. Nothing but directly I have used the variable called as some result. Now this result variable is of type what? We don't know. Just I have used that result equals to x plus y. Then at that time, how much memory do we need to allocate as a C programming language compiler? It doesn't know. So for that here, in order to utilize the memory very, very efficiently, in order to utilize the resources very, very efficiently, first of all, you have to define the variable first, and based on the type, I'm going to be allocating some memory for your variable. Then we can start utilizing that. So now for that here, when coming to the C programming language, it is going to be insisting you, it is enforcing you to define the variable first before its usage, because C programming language is also a tightly coupled programming language. But when you go to some other programming languages like as some VB, at that time, no need to define the variable directly. We can start utilizing the variables over there. When you go to some JavaScript also, we can be able to use the variable directly itself. No need to define that variables. Like the same way when coming to the Apex programming language also, before utilizing that variable, first of all, you have to define the variable. Why? Because Apex programming language is also one of the tightly coupled programming language. In tightly coupled programming language, each and every variable has to be get defined first before its usage in order to utilize the memory very, very efficiently. So that tell me what type of variable that you want. So based on that, I will be reserving the required amount of memory for that, so that you can able to make use of that memory to store the value inside that. So now for that, when coming to the Apex programming language, we need to define the variables before its usage. First of all, we have to define the variable, then only we can able to start utilizing that variable over here. Now, so what are the other fundamental rules given by the Apex programming language here? By using Apex programming language, we can build the custom business logic. Custom business logic, whatever you want. It may be the simple, it may be the complex business logic also, whatever, we can able to build the custom business logic with the help of this Apex programming language. And the next one. By using Apex programming, we can perform all the DML manipulations. All the DML manipulations in the Salesforce objects. We can perform all the DML manipulations. What kind of DML manipulations we can perform? We can able to perform the DML manipulations like the insert. We can insert the record through programmatically. We can update the record through programmatically. We can delete the record through programmatically. We can undelete the record through programmatically. We can upsert the record through programmatically itself. All the DML operations we can able to perform with the help of Apex programming language. Now, so then why we have to come to this Apex programming language? All these operations are performing by using page layout itself. Then what is the need of coming over here? Now you can raise a question also. Now at that time, by using page layout, how many records can we insert at a time? Only one record. Now click on the tab and then click on that new button. It is providing a form to you. Enter the details, click on save button. Your record will be getting saved. After that, click on new button again. The form will be getting open. Enter the details, create a second record. Like that, record by record, we can create each and every record one by one. But sometimes I want to insert some bulk records in a single shot. I want to insert some 20 records, 10 records, 100 records, 1000 records in a single shot. At that time, we can use that, make use of programming language as well. By using Apex programming, we can able to insert some hundreds and thousands of records also we can able to process. That flexibility will be available to you. Not only inserting all the DML operations we can perform on those object records. Nothing but directly by using this Apex programming language, we can able to connect to the database table and we can able to perform the operations on that here. That flexibility will be there. But even though if you're using the page layouts are internally using the Apex programming language to interact with the tables. Why? Because is the graphical user interface will not be having that much of intelligence to connect to the database directly. The request will be sending to the controller nothing but the business logic. Business logic has been implemented with the help of this Apex programming. This Apex programming is connecting to the database tables to you. So that here, if you don't want to use that graphical user interface, if you want to something business process which has to run in the background, we can able to implement that functionalities with the help of Apex programming, which will be internally interacting with the database tables as well to perform all the DML operations. And the next one, Apex programming is tightly integrated with Salesforce objects. Apex programming is tightly integrated with the Salesforce objects. Objects means tables. Object means tables. Whenever you are creating an object in Salesforce, then what will happen? We'll see practically there also. It creates a class to you. It creates a class to you. What it contains, everything we'll see practically when moving forward. Now, after that, so only this DML operations we can perform or any other operations. Now, by using Apex programming, we can retrieve the records from the Salesforce objects, with the help of SOQL queries. So now by using this SOQL queries, nothing but Salesforce object query language. By using that SOQL queries internally in the Apex programming language, we can able to interact with the database tables. We can able to fetch some records from that table as well. SOQL queries are used to retrieve the records only. That's it. SOQL queries are used to retrieve the records only here. We cannot perform any other operation. Just we can retrieve the data, like as your select statement inside your SQL programming. In our database programming, you are having the select statement. That exact select statement is done available with the help of SOQL queries. Now, sometimes I would like to search for some content. Then how can we search for the content over here? For that, Salesforce is providing one programming called as SOSL. That SOSL also we can able to integrate it or incorporated inside your Apex programming language itself. By using Apex, we can search for the content inside the Salesforce instance with the help of SOSL queries. By using that SOSL queries, we can able to interact with the multiple objects. We can able to search for some required content inside that. For example, if you want to search for any of the content, then we are going to the Google. In that Google, it is providing a graphical user interface and it is providing one text box to you. Please enter the search text inside that text box so that when you click on go button, automatically the content will be getting searched. All the results will be visible to you. Like the same way here also, we can able to search for some content inside that associated objects in Salesforce as well. Then functionality is available when coming to that Salesforce with the help of SOSL. SOSL is nothing but a search engine. Okay, this is available. This is called as a search engine, which is used to searching for some content inside the multiple objects in Salesforce at a time. Now, after that, by using Apex programming, by using this Apex programming, we can integrate the Salesforce application with the external systems with the help of REST or SOAP API. So now generally, in order to have the integration of your application with any external system, generally the people are going for the integration tools. We are having some enterprise application integration tools are available. Like we are having TIBCO, WebMethods, CBeyond, and the Microsoft BizTalk, etc. So many integration tools are available. But these integration tools are again an on-premise tools. We have to invest the huge amount to buy the license of this tool, get that software, maintain your own local server, install into your local server, and start mapping the integration between your application. And then in future, after 1 year, that organization is going to be releasing the latest version of that software to you. It may be TIBCO, it may be WebMethods or BizTalk or whatever. That organization will be releasing the latest version of that software to you, which will be having some advanced features inside that. If you need that features, then we have to buy the latest version of the license again by investing the huge amount and upgrade into that your local system, and then we have to map the integration again. After 1 more year, again, those people will release the latest version of the software again. At that time, we have to buy the latest version again by investing the huge amount. So like that, keep on, we are going to be upgrading our existing version with the latest of features by purchasing the latest version license by investing the huge amount. So at that time, it will be very, very difficult to upgrade every year. It will be very, very costly. It will be very, very expensive. So that here, instead of using that expensive integration tools, we can able to use 2 APIs which is giving with the Salesforce to you by default and free of cost. Salesforce is providing 2 APIs to you. 2 APIs. API means what? Application Programming Interface. What it contains a collection of classes inside that. A ready-made built-in classes are available inside that, which is giving by the Salesforce, by which we can able to have the integration of your Salesforce application with any external system. So for that here, instead of investing the huge amount to buy the expensive licenses of that integration tools, we can make use of our API like as SOAP API and the REST API by which we can able to have the integration of your Salesforce with the external systems. So now for that here, we can able to integrate your application with the help of these 2 APIs which we can able to access inside your Apex programming itself. These are also providing some set of classes to you which has been built upon by using Apex programming language itself. Now those classes we can able to access inside the Apex programming, and then we can able to implement that functionalities as well. And the next one, the Apex programming. Each Apex programming code or statement should be compiled and executed by the application server. Application server inside the force.com platform. So now here, when coming to the C programming language, every programming language will be having its own compilers. Okay, every programming language will be having its own compilers. Like C programming language will be having its own compiler. C programming language compiler is there. And C++ will be having C++ language compiler. Java is having Java compiler like as Java C. And the C#.NET will be having their own compiler CSC. CSC is the C# compiler, C# compiler. Now for the VB.NET, they're having VB compiler, VBC. Like that here, every programming language will be having their own compiler. So what the compiler will do, compiler is going to be verifying the syntactical mistakes written by the developer. Whatever the code the developer has written, in that code, if there is any syntactical mistakes are available, that syntactical mistakes will be identified by using that compiler itself. It is going to be verifying that whether the user has written that code based on the rules and the standards given by the programming language or not. Whether he is following those rules given by the programming language while writing the code or not, it will be verifying by the compiler to you here. Now, when coming to your Apex programming language, do you have the compiler or not? Yes, we have a compiler. What is that compiler? Apex compiler. Where it is available? Not in our local. This is available somewhere else. Where it is available? Now we'll see practically over here. Now, let's see here. When coming to the Apex programming language, what is the programming execution architecture? We'll see practically over here, so that you can able to understand what are the various components involved inside that whenever you are going to be executing your Apex code.
Firoz, what is the application server in Apex? It's a WebSphere?
No, it's not the WebSphere. They are using their own customized application server inside that the first.com platform. Salesforce is having their own server.
Oh, okay.
Now let's see what will be the execution architecture of your Apex programming language. Nothing but after writing the code, when you click on execute or when you click on save, what will happen internally in the backend? Now we'll see practically here. Now, for example, assume that I'm having a developer. I'm having a developer. Now this developer has written some code. He has written some Apex programming code in order to perform some operation. Let's assume that he has written some code. So there is some file is there. Inside the file, he has written some Apex code. He has written some Apex code. He has written some Apex code here. Now, once you write this Apex programming code, as soon as when you click on save button, then what will happen in this case? Now, once you are done with the Apex programming language code, when you click on save button, as soon as when you click on save button, in order to save your Apex code, what will happen? Now we will see practically over here. Now, when you click on save button, then what will happen? Whatever the code that you have written, that code will not be compiling in our local. That code will not be executing in our local system because our local system is nothing. It is not having anything. Just we are using the browser and the internet connection to access the cloud-based applications. It may be the ready-made application, it may be a platform, it may be the infrastructure, whatever you are accessing from a specific vendor, everything is available inside the internet, so that we have to make access that by using the browser and the internet connection. No need to install anything in our local system. Even though your system will be having 256 MB of RAM, nothing but very least RAM is also available. At that time, you will be capable to access that cloud-based applications. No need to maintain the high configuration servers. Now, what are the memory that we have that is sufficient? Because we are not storing anything in our local system. We are not installing any additional softwares inside our local system. Just we are using the browser, internet connection. That's it. So that even though you will be having the very least level of configuration system, that will be enough to access that cloud-based application, so that no need to invest a huge amount to buy a high configuration system. Now, as soon as when you click on that save button, once you are done with your Apex programming code, then this code will not be compiling into your local system. This code will be compiling by the first.com platform. Now, let's see here. Already you are aware of when you click on save button, what will happen during that time. When you make a request from your local system, then what will happen? What kind of data will be sending to that first.com platform? We have discussed that. Now let's see here. When coming to the code, as soon as when you click on save button, the code will not be saving into your local system. The code will be saving into your first.com platform. So now, as already we have discussed that previously, whenever you are creating a Salesforce account, then Salesforce is going to be allocating some amount of memory for your organization. Now, inside that organization, your whole code, your applications will be getting resides inside that. Now, let's see here what will be the architecture of this application execution in first.com platform. Now, you will be having that platform will be available, nothing but the first.com platform. So now this is the first.com platform that we have. I'm having this first.com platform. So now this first.com platform will be available where? Inside the Salesforce instance. So now this is the Salesforce instance. This Salesforce instance may be either AP2 or NA1, NA21, NA41, whatever. You are aware of the multiple instances. Assume that for my server, for my organization, the memory has been allocated inside that AP2 server here. Now this is some AP2. So now this is the AP2 server over here. Now, so this is the AP2 server. Now inside this AP2 server, you will be having that platform. You are having the first.com platform inside that. You will be having that first.com platform. So now this first.com platform will be available inside that Salesforce instance. Now I'm having that first.com platform. So inside the first.com platform, what it contains majorly two components inside that here. One is an application server. It contains an application server inside this. It will be having an application server. And along with that, it will be having a component called as metadata repository. It is having a component called as metadata repository. So what exactly the use of metadata repository we'll see practically over here. So now this component is metadata repository. So now what it contains basically, metadata repository contains all your Apex classes, all your triggers, all your Visualforce pages, whatever the functionalities that are written, everything will be available inside the metadata. Metadata means data about that data, nothing but data about that programming, data about that class, whatever the class that you have written by using this Apex programming language. What are the business logic that you have written? What are the triggers you have written? What are the Visualforce pages that you have implemented? Everything will be available inside that metadata repository for you. Now, it contains all Apex classes, triggers, Visualforce pages, etc. What are the business logic that you have implemented? The whole business logic will be available inside that metadata repository inside that. This is like as a version controlling. Okay, this is like as a version controlling where this is a centralized place where it will be storing all the functionalities and the business logic which we have implemented. The whole metadata will be available inside this. Now, along with that metadata repository, we are having a component called as application server. Inside this application server, what it contains, let's see here. Now this is the application server. Inside this application server, you will be having the two components inside that. You will be having the two components inside that application server. The first component is Apex compiler. The first component is Apex compiler. And the second component is Apex runtime. The second component is Apex runtime. So now we are having that Apex compiler. This is the Apex compiler that we have. And then you will be having that Apex runtime. You will be having that Apex runtime. This is the second component that we have. Inside the application server, you will be having the two components are available. One is Apex compiler, second one is Apex runtime. As soon as whenever the user is making a request, whenever the user is saving the code, once he has done, once he has written the code, a sample basic programming code also to perform some operation, as soon as when the user is click on save button to save that code or to execute and to compile that code, immediately the request will be coming to that first.com platform. As soon as when the user click on the save button, the request will be coming to that first.com platform over here. It will be coming to that first.com platform. Now, the request will be coming to that first.com platform. As soon as whenever you are click on save button, what kind of data will be forwarded from your local system to the first.com platform? It is sending so much data over here. So now it is sending the data like your requested URL, whatever the URL that you are requesting here, and then your form data. Form data means your Apex code, whatever the Apex code that you have implemented. And along with that, it will be sending your browser information. It will be sending your operating system information. It will be sending your system's IP address. It will be sending the session ID. It will be sending that organization ID, your Salesforce.com organization ID. And along with that, it is sending that user ID as well. Okay, it will be sending that user ID also here. The whole information will be getting forwarded to that the first.com platform. Now, as soon as whenever this particular request is reaching to the first.com platform, first of all, the first.com platform is going to be getting that session ID. It will verify this session ID is still in active status or not. Once the session is in active status, then it will verify with this organization ID, do we have any organization inside our Salesforce instance or not? Do you have any Salesforce account is exist with this ID or not here? It will verify. If the Salesforce.com organization ID is available, then it is going to be redirecting this user to that associated organization. So at that time, as soon as it will be reaching to that application server, now first of all, it is going to be verifying this organization user ID. For this user ID, what are the permissions are available inside the profile? Whether this user is able to perform this particular operation or not, it will verify inside that profile. Already you are aware of the security concept here. During the security concept, we are going to be discussing, we have discussed about that. Every operation and every rights we can able to grant to the user with the help of the profile. Because profile is a component which contains a set of permissions which can be assigned to one or more users inside that organization. So that inside the profile, it will be verified whether this user is having the rights to perform this operation or not. Might be this user has written some Apex code to insert some records here. If the user is not having the rights to insert these records into that object, then it will not be able to perform that operation. Because this user is not having the rights to insert the record, just he is having read permission, but he is not having the right permission to create some records inside that. For that here, before performing the operation, first of all, the first.com application server will be identifying that user ID. Based on that user ID, it will be going to that associated profile inside the profile object. In that profile, it will verify whether this user is having the rights to insert the records inside this account object or not. At that time, if the user is having the rights to insert the record, then the record will be getting inserted. It will perform that operation here. Or else it won't perform those operations to you here. Now, so now for that, as soon as when you click on that save button, Okay, when you click on that save button, the request will be coming to your Salesforce instance. Now, after that, the request will be sending to the first.com platform, and then the request will be sending to that application server. Now, this is the code that I have written right now. Now, as soon as when you click on this save button, okay, as soon as when you click on this particular save button, now at that time, it is sending your request to that application server. Now, whatever the code that you have written, that code has to be get compiled first. So for that here, the request will be sending to the Apex compiler. It will be sending the request to that Apex compiler right now. Now the request will be forwarding to that Apex compiler. Now each and every request has to be compiled by the Apex programming compiler first. The request will be sending to that Apex compiler. Now the compiler is going to be receiving that whole code which you have written as of now inside that file. It will retrieve the whole code, and that code will be getting compiled by using this Apex compiler. Now compiler will verify whether do we have any syntactical mistakes or not. The logic may be correct or not, it won't bother about that. Whatever the logic you have written, it won't bother about that. Just it will verify while writing that business logic whether you have followed all the syntactical rules and the standards and the guidelines given by the Apex programming language or not. That's it will verify here. It won't verify whether that logic is correct or not. It won't verify here. That will be decided at runtime. Now, for that here, once the programming language code has been compiled successfully, okay, once the programming language code has been compiled successfully, here one more case will be getting arised. At the time of compilation, if there is any syntactical mistakes are there, then what will happen here? If there is any syntactical mistakes are available inside that code which you have written, then immediately this Apex compiler is going to be sending the response back to that user. It is sending that response back to the user. There are some syntactical mistakes are available inside your code. It is sending that response immediately here. Now it will send that response. These are the compilation errors. Regarding that compilation errors, it is sending that response immediately to that particular user. Now, whatever the code previously he has sent, this is an uncompiled Apex code. He is sending the request to that first.com platform with the uncompiled Apex code. Whatever the code that you have written, this is not yet compiled. Now we are sending that uncompiled Apex code to that first.com platform for the compilation here. At the time of compilation, if there is any syntactical mistakes are available, immediately the Apex compiler is going to be sending the response back to that user that there are some compilation errors are available. So please rectify this code and please resubmit for the compilation again. Now, so now, for example, if there is no compilation errors available here, then what will happen? If there is no compilation errors are available, then at that time, now the Apex compiler is going to be compiling your code successfully. Now it is going to be storing that code into that metadata repository. Whatever the code that you have implemented, that code will be saving into that metadata repository automatically here. In that metadata repository, your code will be getting saved. What code? Compiled code. Nothing but the compiled Apex code will be saving into that metadata repository. Compiled Apex code will be saving into that metadata repository inside that. So now whatever the Apex programming language code that you have compiled successfully, that compiled Apex code will be saving into the metadata repository here. Metadata repository is nothing but the location where exactly we can able to save all your Apex classes, your triggers, and the Visualforce pages code. Everything will be getting resides inside this place. Now, whenever it is saving this code into that metadata repository, then it will be making an entry inside a table here. Now, internally, Apex compiler is going to be maintaining one table called as Apex class. Okay, Apex class is a table internally it will maintain to you here. Like as when coming to the account records, we are storing that account table. When coming to the contact records, we are using the contact table. For the opportunity records, we are using that opportunity table. For the Apex classes also, it will be maintaining one table that is called as Apex class table to you over here. Now, let me show you practically here. Let's go to your Salesforce instance. I will show you practically that. I'm logging into that Salesforce instance. So now let's see, do we have any classes or not? No, we don't have any classes right now. Let me create a small class inside that. Assume that I have defined few variables inside my class. I have saved this class. After writing this code, when you click on save button, okay, after writing this class code, when you click on save button, automatically the request will be sending to the first.com platform. That architecture we are discussing right now here. Now the code has been compiled successfully. It is going to be saving my code over here. Now, as soon as whenever my code has been getting compiled, then where it will save this code? This code will be saving into the metadata repository here. Then how can we identify this class in future? For that, when coming to the Salesforce, Salesforce is maintaining one table called as Apex class table. In that Apex class table, all the Apex classes code will be getting resides inside that. Let me show you practically here. You will be aware of that developer console and the query editor. How can we query the data from your tables? Now go to that query editor. We can fetch that information. Select ID comma name from Apex class. I'm having a table with the name Apex class internally using by the Salesforce to you. When you click on execute, it is going to be giving that information that now this is the class that we have inside your Salesforce instance with the name sample just now we have created. Now, this is the ID for that particular class. Nothing but a unique identification number will be getting generated by the Salesforce. Now, what is the content that you have written? If you want to get the content, then you can use a column called as body. Body column is going to be getting that content also here. When you click on execute now, it is getting that content also. Third column is also available to you here. Inside that body column, it will be getting that content. If you want to get the content, just double click on that, copy that whole code, Control A, Control C, you can able to paste wherever you want. So this is the code that we have written inside that. Whatever the code that we have written, everything will be available to you. So now these are the three variables that I have defined inside that class. This is the code is available to you. Whatever the code that you have defined, the whole code is available inside that. Nothing but what happened, as soon as when you click on save button, the code will be sending to that first.com platform. Inside the first.com platform, there is an application server is available. Application server will be having an internal component called as Apex compiler. Now the Apex compiler is going to be receiving that uncompiled Apex programming code. It will be compiling that code. If the compilation has been successfully completed, then it is going to be sending that compiled code into the metadata repository by making an entry into that Apex class table. As soon as whenever it is storing that code into the Apex class metadata repository, the code will be getting generated here. This is the ID has been getting generated for that Apex class here. Now this ID will be sending to the Apex runtime. Now it is going to be sending that code to the Apex runtime here. As soon as Apex compiler is going to be compiling the code, as soon as once the code has been saving into the metadata repository, now immediately it is going to be sending that indication to the Apex runtime that just now I have compiled an Apex class code and that code I have stored into the metadata repository. So this is the ID of this class here. So now please get this class and then execute the code and then generate the result, send the response back to that result here, user. So now for that immediately, it is going to be sending an indication to that Apex runtime.
Firoz, the metadata is like the class that you showed, that one is a metadata or something else also it will
See,
have?
you will be having two files will be there in the metadata repository. One is the actual code which you have written, and the second one is a metadata file which is an XML based file to you. Two files will be available for every class. It may be trigger, it may be visual first page, whatever you have written. For every functionality, will be having the two files. One is the actual code, nothing but the class file which you have written, and the second one is the metadata file that is purely an XML based file to you.
So we can view that?
Yeah, we can view that here. Now, by using that Eclipse IDE, we can able to view that code as well. You can view that two files also here. When moving forward during that Eclipse IDE, we are discussing over there. How to configure the Eclipse IDE? How can we get that whole Salesforce code into our local system by using the Eclipse IDE? How can we write the code inside that Eclipse IDE? And how can we move the code to our Salesforce instance? How can we synchronize the code? How to deploy the code? Everything we'll see practically. Now, so now when coming to the Apex compiler, as soon as the code has been getting compiled successfully, it will be saving that code into that metadata repository. It will be making an entry into that Apex class table. And then whatever the ID has been getting generated by the Salesforce for that Apex class, that ID will be sending to the Apex runtime. Just it is indicating to the Apex runtime that as a compiler, just now I have compiled that code. Now this is the code that I have compiled, I have stored into the metadata repository. This is the ID of that particular class. So please get this code and execute the code and send the response back to the user. Now at that time, as soon as the Apex runtime is going to be receiving that Apex class code ID, now it is going to be making a request to that metadata repository again. It will be sending a request to that metadata repository. Now it is sending the request to that metadata repository right now. So now the metadata repository for what? Compiled Apex. Nothing but please provide me the compiled Apex code over here. Now this is for request for the compiled Apex. Request for the compiled Apex code. So now whatever the Apex code has been stored inside that metadata repository by the compiler, in order to get that Apex code, it is making a request to that. So now it is making a request. It is making a request to that metadata repository that please provide me that Apex programming code which has been stored inside the metadata repository. Now, once the metadata repository has received this request, now it is going to be searching for the required content inside this metadata repository. As soon as it has identified that requested code, now it will be sending that response back. Nothing but it is sending that code back to that particular Apex runtime. Now the Apex runtime will be receiving that requested code. Now, requested Apex code. Whatever the Apex code has been requested by this particular compiler, the Apex runtime, that code will be forwarding to that Apex runtime by the metadata repository. Now it is going to be sending that code over here. The requested code will be sending to that Apex runtime. Now, as soon as Apex runtime is receiving this particular code from the metadata repository, now it is going to be executing that code. It will get that code. It will be storing that code into that buffer memory. Inside that buffer memory, it is going to be storing that code. And then it will store that code into that buffer memory here. So now this is the buffer memory. Inside that buffer memory, that Apex code will be getting stored. And after that, it is going to be executing that Apex code over here. Now, it will execute that Apex code. The execution will be getting done. Execution. Now, whenever it is going to be executing the Apex code, sometimes it has to be get interact with the database also here. Upon executing that code, it has to be get some data from the database, or it has to save some records into the database, or it has to delete some data from the database. It has to modify some data from the database also. So for that here, internally it is going to be interacting with the database also here. So now we are having the database. So now this is the database that we have. So now what is the database for the Salesforce applications?
Arkil?
No. We have discussed about one database.
Data.com?
Database.
Database.com, sorry.
Yes, right. So now when coming to the Salesforce, Salesforce is using one database called as database.com.
But internally it is Arkil, right, Firoz? Database.com built on Arkil, right?
No, it's built not built upon Arkil. It's like as an Arkil. It's a customized of that Arkil database.
Oh, okay. I read somewhere that they built on Arkil, or they steal somewhere. There is
yes. Arkil is a normal SQL query based database, but this is the database.com, which has offered by the Salesforce is purely ORM. Okay, ORM technology. So now inside this database.com, you will be having all your Salesforce objects will be getting resides. So at that time, in order to perform some operations inside that object, now it is going to be interacting with the database as well. It is interacting with the database. It is performing those operations inside the database also. At the time of execution, it is interacting with this database also. It may insert some records. It may update some records. It may delete some records. It may fetch some records also. For that, bidirectional navigation is available between this execution process and the database.com. So now once the code has been getting executed, now it is going to be generating the response, and then that response will be converting into that HTML format here. Now, whatever the response it has generated, that response will be storing inside that the HTML format. Result in HTML format. Whatever the result it has generated, that result will be converting into that HTML format. That HTML format of result will be storing inside that. It will be converting into that HTML format. That HTML format of content will be sending to that associated user. So now, this response will be sending to that associated user who is making that request. It will be sending that response back to that associated user. Now, this is the actual process is going on when coming to that Apex programming execution architecture. This is the response, nothing but the result. Now, so now when coming to the Apex programming language code, this is the execution architecture will be getting happen inside that. So now as soon as whenever the user is making a request, that request will be sending to that the associated instance. Now the Salesforce instance is going to be sending the request to the Force.com platform. Each and every user request has to be get authorized by the Force.com platform first. Now the Force.com platform is going to be authorizing the request by using that session ID, by using that organization ID. If the session is inactive, then it is going to be indicating that this user is in active status, so that here we will be allowing this user to enter into our Force.com platform. And then it will verify whether this organization IDs exist or not. If the organization IDs exist, then only it will be allowing us to enter into that Force.com platform. Once the user request has been entered into the Force.com platform, now the request will be redirecting to the application server, which is the customized application server using by the Salesforce people. Now, the request will be sending to the application server. Inside that application server, you will be having that Apex compiler. The request will be routed to the Apex compiler. Now, the Apex compiler responsibility is it has to receive that uncompiled Apex code. It has to compile that code. It has to verify, do we have any syntactical mistakes available inside the code or not. It won't bother about whether the logic is correct or not, just it will verifying that syntax is correct or not. That's it. Now, for that here, And whenever it is trying to be compiling the Apex code, if there is any compilation errors are available at that time, your code will not be saving into the metadata repository. Immediately it will be sending that response back to that user that there are some compilation errors are available, so that we are unable to compile your code successfully. We are unable to save your code into the metadata repository. So that please modify the code and please resubmit the code again for the recompilation process. Once a user has modified the code and he has resubmitted the code for the compilation again, now the Apex compiler is going to be compiling the code again. It will be verifying that if there is any syntactical mistakes are there, then the same process will be getting happen. If there is no syntactical mistakes available inside the code, if the code has been compiled successfully, then it is going to be saving that code into the metadata repository. Inside the metadata repository, you will be having all the Apex classes code and the triggers which you have implemented, Visual Force pages code, everything will be getting resides inside this metadata repository only. And from there, as soon as it will be storing that code into the metadata repository, it will be making an entry inside that table called as Apex class table. Now, upon saving your code, your entry will be storing inside that Apex class table. As soon as whenever it is storing that Apex class code inside that Apex, the metadata repository, that will be making an entry inside that Apex class table, where while adding that entry, it will be generating one unique identification number for that. That unique identification number will be receiving by the Apex compiler. Now, the Apex compiler is going to be instructing or indicating to the Apex runtime, just now I have compiled one Apex class code. I have saved that Apex class code into the metadata repository. So this is the ID of that class. So please that code based on this ID and then execute it and generate the result and send the response back to that associated user. Now, Apex runtime is going to be receiving that code. Like as suppose, for example, here. When coming to the every programming language, you will be having the two components at the time of execution of your code. One is the compiler, second one is a runtime engine. Suppose when you go to the Java programming language, as soon as whenever you are compiling the Java programming code by using Java C compiler, it will be generating a bytecode format. Okay, it is generating a bytecode which cannot be understandable by the operating system. Now to execute that code, first of all, we have to convert that bytecode into the machine understandable format. So for that, we are using a runtime environment called as the JVM, Java Virtual Machine. Java Virtual Machine is going to be receiving that bytecode as the input. It is converting that bytecode format into that associated machine understandable format. Depends upon that operating system. So now then your code will be getting executed and we can able to see the result inside that. Suppose when you go to the .NET programming language, whenever you are compiling there some C# programming code by using a compiler called as CSC, C# compiler, it will be converting that source code into that a separate format called as MSIL format, nothing but Microsoft Intermediate Language format. That Microsoft Intermediate Language format will not be understandable with the operating system. So at that time, we have to convert that MSIL format into the machine understandable format in order to make it executable. For that here, internally it is using a component called as JIT compiler, nothing but just in time compiler. Just in time compiler is going to be receiving that MSIL format of code as input. It will be converting that MSIL format of code into the machine understandable format. So now the JIT compiler is going to be converting that MSIL format into the machine understandable format. Then we can execute the code and we can see the result also. Like the same way here also, we are having the compiler, we are having the runtime. When coming to the Java programming, we are having a compiler, we are having a runtime that is called as JVM. For .NET also, we are having a compiler that is some CSC and the runtime engine is called as some JIT compiler. Like the same way, when coming to the Apex programming language also, we are having a compiler and we are having a runtime. Compiler is going to be taking care of the responsibility of compiling the Apex code which you have implemented. And the runtime engine is going to be taking care of executing the Apex code which has been compiled successfully. So that as soon as Apex compiler is done with the compilation process, it will be sending that class ID to that Apex runtime. Now the Apex runtime is going to be receiving that ID and then it will be making a request to that metadata repository. Now please provide me the Apex code which is associated with this ID. Now the metadata repository will receive this request from that Apex runtime. It will be identifying that ID of that particular code. Based on that ID, it will be fetching the whole data from that Apex class table. It will be sending that response back to that Apex runtime. Nothing but whatever the Apex programming code requested by the Apex runtime, that code will be sending to that Apex runtime. Now Apex runtime will receive that code. It will be storing into the buffer memory here. Once the data has been, the code has been saving into the buffer memory, now it will start executing that code. Upon execution, it may be interacting with the database also to perform some database operations, nothing but the DML operations and retrieving the data, whatever. And then it will be executing that code by interacting with the database. After that, it is generating the response. That response will be converting into the HTML format. Why it is converting into the HTML format? Why? Because Salesforce is not an on-premise application. It is on demand. Everything we are going to be accessing by using that browser itself. By using browser and the internet connection, we are accessing that. So that whatever the result it has generated, if you want to display this result into the browser, then it is to be in a HTML format. So that here, this application server is going to be taking the responsibility of converting this particular result into that HTML format. The HTML format of content will be sending to the client browser. In the browser, the user can able to see that result itself. So for that here, each and every result or the response which has been received by this Apex runtime, it is converting into that HTML format. That HTML format of content will be storing inside that, sending into that user, so that the user can able to see inside that browser itself. So this is the whole execution process is happening when coming to the Apex programming code. This execution architecture is very, very important. When coming to the entry point of view, definitely they will raise this question. What exactly the metadata repository, what is Apex compiler, what is Apex runtime, how these are communicating with each other. These are very, very important in the entry point of view.
Okay. Firoz, how many application servers per, like each organization will have an application server, or it is a common for across the organization in the Salesforce instance, or they have a cluster?
For every instance, you will be having a common application server, not the multiple application server.
It's more than one then.
Sorry?
It will be in a cluster, right? It's more than one, right?
No, because every instance will be having its own Force.com platform. Because we are having multiple servers, right? Like as AP2,
for example,
AP1, AP3.
If you take AP2, like we have multiple tenants, right? If around
8,000 plus.
8,000 plus.
Yes.
How many application servers will be there? Like, I mean, like that. Those many application server. Basically, my question is: each organization will have its own application server, or it's a common for?
No, it's a common for all the organizations. For every organization, it will be having a common application server. There is no separate application server for every organization. Now, for all the organizations inside a single instance, you will be having only one Force.com platform. You will be having only one application server, and multiple organizations are available to you inside that.
Oh.
Okay. So now this is the execution architecture. In tomorrow's session, we'll see the various fundamental building blocks of Apex programming. So what are the various fundamental building blocks given by the Apex programming? We'll see practically in tomorrow's session. Yeah.
Yeah, Firoz, can we see compiler file, physical compiler file?
No, we can't see that physical compiler file. Because when you go to that Java programming, once you compile that, it is generating some class files to you. We can see that class files. But here, we cannot see that compiler files. Just we can see our source code.
Okay. Can we debug it let's say we wrote some code.
Okay.
We want to see where it is failing. Can we debug line by line?
No, line by line debugging is not available to you, because whenever you are executing that code, at the time of execution, for each and every execution, it is generating a separate log file to you. That log file is called as a debug log file. In that debug log file, we can able to trace it out where exactly our code is failing. What is the reason? Everything we can able to trace it out inside the debug log file. When moving forward, we'll see how can we see the debug log files, where exactly it is available to you, what it contains, everything we'll see practically over there.
Like Java, we cannot put the debug point here, right, Firoz?
Because you will be having in Java, you can place a breakpoint also. You can able to debug the every line.
Yeah, you cannot put a breakpoint, all those things. Yeah.
Yes. Because Java will be having one IDE will be available to you. Like as we'll be having the Eclipse is the one of the IDE which we are installing into your local. You can able to debug that code. Why? Because
Okay.
the programming language is also available inside your local system, and the ID is also available in our local system. Code is also saving inside the local system itself, so that we can able to make a breakpoint and we can able to debug the code line by line as well. But here you don't
Oh.
have that option. In the debug log file, we can able to cross check that.
No, but if you're using Eclipse for the force.com with that
But even
Apex
though if
dev-
you're using that Eclipse IDE, but the programming has to be get executed from the internet only, from the force.com platform only, so that it is not.
Oh, you cannot-
flexible. No. We
Oh, you
don't have
cannot do a
that.
breakpoint. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because you cannot run the server in a debug mode. You cannot do that
Yes,
one since
yes.
it is executing. And okay,
Yes.
got it.
Okay.
Okay, Firoz.
Thank you.
Yeah, please share that that Firoz the.
Yeah, sure.
the-
Dump I will share today, because I will be getting
Okay,
the
thank-
201 dump today. I will be sharing that.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Firoz, that functions, field functions.
Yeah. Okay. That will be the formula fields, right? So now I will be sharing. I
formula.
will share that today. But today evening I will share that.
Okay. Yeah.